Thank you, Madam President. So as anyone who paid attention to the municipal elections last spring heard, we're extremely lucky in Denver to have what is probably the leading alternate responder program in the country, the Support Team Assisted Response, or STAR program. A summary of what that does: STAR is an evidence-based and community-led alternative to law enforcement response that empowers clinicians and health professionals to respond compassionately and skillfully to people in mental health or substance use crises, or those experiencing issues of poverty and homelessness. The program pairs medics from Denver Health with mental health professionals from WellPower to jointly respond to calls identified by our 911 center as STAR appropriate, and then to provide holistic, culturally responsive community support services after the original crisis response, primarily through Servicios de la Raza. The STAR program currently includes 16 teams of clinicians and medics with 9 total vans, several of which are currently being retrofitted and will soon be online. As of September 23, the program operates 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. A study from Stanford on the STAR program last year found that it created large and sustained reductions in criminal offenses, a 35% reduction in these offenses in the areas where STAR operated, meaning nearly 1,400 criminal offenses in just 6 months of operation that were studied. The same study found that the program costs just $151 per offense reduced, a number that's less than a quarter of the cost of the direct criminal justice cost for a minor criminal offense, in other words, imprisonment and prosecution. So the direct costs of having police as first responders to individuals in mental health and substance abuse crises are over 4 times as large as the costs associated with the STAR alternate response model. The overall program budget for STAR saw just a 6% increase from 2023 to 2024, and given the program's runaway success, it merits a much larger increase in the budget. STAR involves multiple subcontractors and has had to navigate the shortages of healthcare and social services professionals. And also, crucially, it operates through a community advisory committee. So the combination of being a program with multiple subcontractors and our city processes, which are not always fast, has meant that it understandably takes time for programming expansions to ramp up. So to answer any concern folks on council might have about STAR's ability to get new funds out the door in 2024, we asked all of the subcontractors to the program what the program could do with $4 million of additional funding, which we're proposing across 3 amendments. Denver Health has discussed that with an additional $1 million in their contract, hypothetically, they could add 2 additional supervisors, 6 additional staff, and 3 more vans. And until they have the funds to do that, they can't begin the work it takes to secure the vans, secure the additional staff. So although that takes time, it's worth funding it now because that's what we'd like to see grow. WellPower responded that they could continuously add to the number of STAR trains to have more consistent coverage across the city, be able to spread the vans out because there are areas and districts that can't consistently get a STAR van in response to calls. And they would like to be able to offer more immediate resources for individuals the van responds to, such as clothing, hygiene products, food, water, and continuum of care resources. Servicios de la Raza reports that after their ramp-up period, they're now fully staffed, and that their spend down rate would quickly eclipse the contract amount that they already have in 2024. They have plans for expansion, have multiple community partners that are fully staffed up, and are essentially waiting for the budget to be able to carry out those plans. So starting with the proposed funding source for this first amendment, the first of 3 on our agenda tonight that total $4 million. Like many other council offices, my office has been curious about the interplay and efficacy of the many outreach teams that our city stands up and funds to go out and have contact with people who are living in unsheltered homelessness. And here is what we learned about the street enforcement team, we propose repurposing the funding for that team over to STAR. Since being activated in September 2021, the SET team has responded to about 4,500 calls, and about 500 of those contacts have resulted in an offer of some kind of assistance that was accepted. That's 11% of calls that actually resulted in a resource referral. Each of those referrals, therefore, cost about $10,000 to the city, which is not an efficient use of funds, particularly compared to the efficacy of STAR. SET has also provided actual sheltering in the form of hotel stays to 50 people, which is a negligible result of SET encounters. In comparison, the Denver Street Outreach Collaborative, a group of nonprofit partners that the city supports, is contracted for 2024 to bring 1,000 people indoors for $3 million, or approximately $3,000 per sheltering outcome. So far more efficient use of resources compared to this other enforcement team within safety. You might ask whether what the SET team is actually doing is not resource navigation, but rather enforcing criminal laws, but they don't write tickets. So they don't carry out enforcement. They don't carry out a huge number of resource navigation. They essentially contact people living in unsheltered homelessness in response to calls to the non-emergency police line or 311 so that those calls can be cleared. This is not an attack on the people who work on that team any more than any budget decision that we make. And I want to point out that we frequently have job openings on our other city outreach teams and in our 911 call center. I also want to address any criticism or implication that the motivation for this amendment is an ideological desire to defund the police. And I just want to say that I'm not up here with a protest slogan. I'm up here proposing that we look at what works to make people in our city safer, concretely safer, and conversely at what doesn't work. We examine the budgets for every agency and program in our city during this process, and the Department of Safety should not be alone among our agencies to be insulated from that kind of examination. We need to fund safety programs with proven effectiveness. We need to fund programs that address the root causes of crime and unsafety, and we need to fund what we want to see grow. So I ask my colleagues for their support for this modest shift of resources from the proposed Department of Safety budget, which is the biggest by far of any agency in the city, for a form of outreach, from a form of outreach that has been ineffective to one that we know works. I ask my colleagues for a yes vote on this amendment. Thank you, Madam President.